WWE Night of Champions is the next pay-per-view coming up after SummerSlam, and there are potential matches that we can talk about. Firstly, starting off with Randy Orton and Mark Henry. That feud sort of becoming an issue on SmackDown this past Friday, as we saw those two clash after that Battle Royale, and it looks like Mark Henry's push is going to take him all the way up to the championship. A lot of people probably surprised to see him there so quickly, but they needed a legit competitor for Orton. They needed someone that could step into the ring with Orton, and actually, I'm surprised to be saying this, but in this case, it's actually Mark Henry who is revitalising Randy Orton. What a turnaround.
Sometimes you'd wonder if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Is this the state we're in, or is this a good state to be in? And is it about time Mark Henry got a deserved push, many would say, or that scraping the barrel push and lack of heels position he's found himself in? Either way, I think he's been built solidly. I do like what they've done with him, and I do think he's believable as that big monster heel. I think actually a run with the belt for him would be a good thing across the board. It would keep the usual suspects like Cena, Orton away from it, and it would give a legit monster heel, not a Cali who can't do much, or someone of that type. I suppose he's really the only one I can think of, and it probably is the only one of that type. But he can go and he can wrestle pretty decently, and he's pretty agile for his size. I think he could get a decent monster heel run with that belt. Maybe not too long, a month or two, and then pull it back off him. I don't know if he's had I don't think he's ever been a WWE champion, World Heavyweight Champion in the case of the SmackDown brand, but I think a short-term run with the belt would do no harm for Mark Henry. I think he's worked hard enough.
It's an interesting place for him to be. As I say, such a short time to arrive here. Monster heel is where I wanted it to go from the very beginning. All-out push, and a guy that we know is the world's strongest man. We can believe that he's a badass, and of course that size and what he's done over these past few weeks has built this character now to something very, very special. I think this has got to be the pinnacle of his career so far. It wasn't Mae Young in the hand, even though everyone remembers that. It could very well be that this is going to be a guy who's going to become a world heavyweight champion. If he's going to retire having just gotten one world title, I would say, as a kind of a long time wrestler guy, WHC is not a bad place to go for him. Of course, can you then build SmackDown and keep it interesting week on week with him on his own? Mm-hmm. That's what I'd wonder. His mic skills, they're okay, but it's more what he can do with his strength and brute force, like smashing up production equipment, that interests me.
It's true. I think, though, in fairness, what I've seen of him lately, there's a lot of unexplored territory with him. I think if he's given the chance to shine, that he can do it. And that promo he cut before the Battle Royale and SmackDown, and the way he put the whole thing together, and I suppose on topic of being on a rocky ship and firing people overboard, I thought that was kind of a clever little pun on the situation he was in with that Battle Royale. And some of the other promos, they're kind of believable. You do think he is the monster heel, and you do want to stay out of his way. If you were in his way, not that we are, but any poor sucker that I'm sure will feel the brunt of that one. So going forward, I think if they give him a chance to shine, he can definitely do it. Look at R-Truth. I mean, they gave him the green light, and he's been pretty good with it. So I'm sure Mark Henry has it in him. It might get pretty old pretty quick, but you never know unless you go.
I reckon Orton is delighted to finally have a guy that can match up to him, and I'm sure everybody backstage has been impressed with how, in a sense, Henry, he's been written to have it turned around, and that is, of course, that lack of a presence for so long. Even when he was in these main event matches for a week or so, of course he had that time when he came back as a babyface with that red outfit, and for a time it looked like he was going to be doing some Cena pairings, team offs and things like that, but that didn't take long to dissipate. Of course, he had that he used to salute to the crowd, didn't he, to try and make them all mark out, but it didn't work, clearly, the babyface thing. So again, it was nice to see they decided, right, we did do that, but let's just go the other way again, quickly, and actually try and make him something. So he's actually had, in a sense, some interest for a bit longer than this heel thing. It starts, I think, back at that babyface relaunch, coming off ECW with Tony Atlas, and that, of course, is where we last remember him as heel. Now, I say bring Tony Atlas back. Maybe not Axana this time, but Tony Atlas would be a good thing. But then again, that's the thing about him, is he's maintained enough presence to be a guy who can stand on his own, even though you might question it as well. I think he's got enough power and strength, if you like, to be a firm character without the manager being the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
But of course, Orton, it's a match that's going to be, I think, brutal.
I think there is no stipulation added so far. It's not even announced officially, has it been?
To be honest, I'm just going to say it's a guess that it's happening.
I'm sure it's
Yeah.
going to be a very good guess, and I'm sure it will be, as he is number one contender going forward. I think if the E are clever about this and not to damage Orton's legacy in any way, they should make it, and maybe not because we've had no DQ matches with Orton and Christian, or no holds barred, was it called that, at SummerSlam or whatever, but not to damage Orton's, I'm not going to say legacy again, reputation, whatever you want to call it, and value. If they make some sort of gimmick match where they can have Mark Henry go over and do some serious damage to Orton, what they did with Sheamus by putting him through that ring guard or whatever, and not just have Orton job 1, 2, 3 without any serious damage, I think both of them will come out the better for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they could certainly come out of this as we've just had a legit feud, and both have been sadly lacking in those for the most recent weeks. I said earlier, it's just shocking to be in a situation where you actually feel like Mark Henry could be the saviour of Orton's career, because it's the start of something for Orton, who really has not had the best of competitors in my eyes. I wasn't into the Christian thing. It was an interesting way of starting it for SmackDown, but I felt like they did more of that Christian angle because they got that huge reaction when they initially took the belt off Christian after that one night, and they kind of said, let's just go with that, it's hot, people are talking about it. But I think people got bored very, very quickly. So happy to be on here as Mark Henry v Orton, and we're going to assume that that's going to be the World Heavyweight Championship match for Night of Champions, expecting possibly as well a three-way something, fatal four-way, something like that. But going on those two, I'm just going to say Mark Henry. Well, it's Night of Champions, so Mark Henry is going to take it to Survivor Series, get the belt at Survivor Series. So Orton is going to win this one.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. Yeah, I think you've got a couple of weeks in it, so yeah, absolutely. Orton will probably take it at Night of Champions, or retain it at Night of Champions, and going forward, Mark Henry will get there eventually.
Now, of course, we're doing this live on Justin. It's a live video cast as we share our opinions on wrestling. We've been on a while now, and just to finish off tonight, we are talking Night of Champions predictions. A lot of people in our chat room as well. Bite Mike, hello to you. Captain Charisma and Kid Kong, who has suggested his card for Night of Champions would be Del Rio versus Cena versus Punk. Again, possible. Orton versus Henry. Cody Rhodes versus Big Zeke or Ted DiBiase. Alex Riley v Dolph Ziggler. Possibly v Jack Swagger. Which actually I thought it was going to be Riley v Ziggler for that last show. But that didn't make it on. I didn't hear, was it dark or...
I think it could have been, actually, yeah.
Right. Let's say that one's going to happen, finally, because of course they built it again with the commentary stuff this week.
And a good job that they've done with that too. A very good job. I like this idea of a stable of superstars, if you will, like with Vicky, you know, if she takes Swagger on board and she has Dolph, and I think that's kind of old school and kind of fun. Yeah,
it's one that, again, I'm not sure if I'll enjoy the TV build for this. I know I'll enjoy the pay-per-view match, but again, I'm just not so into the Vicky character. I was a bit of a Riley fan, but he just has become bland to me now, kind of standing on his own, and almost he's the NXT Season 2 guy again, really. We've forgotten about all this Miz stuff. Well, I have anyway.
Yeah, the babyface damage control always comes into it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's actually been hugely damaging, definitely. So not knowing that that's definitely going to be on the card yet, and potentially with Swagger also being involved, I suppose we can go on Riley v Ziggler, and in that, I would say Ziggler is going to hold court for a while. I think Ziggler is going to be coming out on top in this feud.
Yeah, there'll be no reason for him to drop that belt anytime soon.
Absolutely, and Filibuster, welcome to you indeed tonight. And just to let you know, we're going to be back on Justin.tv. We've come back with our tail between our legs, back to the wrestling section here on Justin.tv. Alberto Del Rio versus Cena is something we talked about in that previous video here on the channel. People have talked about how Punk could be waylaid into this, that it might be a three-way. Maybe you're going to have Triple H or Kevin Nash at ringside. I think actually a lot has to go forward TV-wise to let us know what's going to happen here. So I suppose to start and say Del Rio v Cena, it's hard to say, but I actually think Del Rio is going to be the belt holder for a while. I think what they've done recently is going to stick.
Too much chopping and changing as of late, as of just very recently. I think too much chopping and changing with that title. I'd like to see Del Rio hold it out until the end of the year, if possible, because Cena doesn't really need to have it. He doesn't really. He can just float around and do what he does. And Punk's tied up with Trips and Lauren Iris and the rest of them, so they can drag the arse out of that until. Definitely Survivor Series.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens tomorrow on Monday Night Raw. That's 3 possible matches for Night of Champions. We'll give more up-to-date predictions in the coming weeks here on the channel, youtube.com/TheWrestle